I'm delighted to welcome Natalie Gates as our guest today. She works in creative industries, and specifically she works in heritage. So let's see some of the sort of work Natalie does. That was great. So Natalie, tell us what your job is and what that means on a day-to-day basis.
Well, Peter, I'm the partnerships team leader in the East of England for Historic England. And the job title hides a huge amount. Firstly, I have a national role as well, overseeing our advice in the Oxford-Cambridge corridor with the proposal to put over 1 million homes in the area by 2050. Regionally, I oversee our help and advice in high streets and places through our Heritage Action Zone programme. And then my team is filled with architectural researchers, architects, surveyors, people who build relationships in the cultural and economic and governmental sector. I've probably missed it. The most important thing is we give out a lot of grants, and I'm responsible for those too.
Wow, it sounds like you've got a busy job, a really busy job. So can you tell us, what was it that inspired you to have a career in heritage? Tell us, what was it? How did this start?
Oh, that's good question. I've never had a career plan. For starters, some people have a career plan, it works for them, that's brilliant. That's not me. I have just followed what I'm good at and what I'm interested in, and those two things so far, touch wood, have stood me in good stead. Inspiration wise, I had a lot of teachers over the years, right the way from primary right the way through, who nudged and suggested, and they didn't know the end where you're going to end up, but they kept nudging you in the right direction. But if you talk about my real inspiration, was my PhD supervisor, Professor Norman Palmer. He was barrister, he was also a CBE, and was the only cultural property lawyer really in the country. You may have seen him getting out of the car after Amal Clooney when they went to try and solve the Elgin marbles. You would think it was Amal going, but actually it was Professor Palmer's team that Amal was one of them. He's no longer with us, but without him, I wouldn't be here.
So the creative industries, the series we're working on is about creative industries. And do you consider yourself part of creative industries? Is what you do creative? And if so, in what ways?
It's a good question. No, I wouldn't say I'm part of the creative industries. I'm a lawyer. I work in heritage. I do planning policy and things like that. But is my job creative all the time? You need to problem solve. You need to think outside the box. You need to look for solutions. You need to build relationships between people. You need to be able to inspire and design and think about how things could be better and what you can do. So absolutely, it's creative to its core.
I think that's important because many young people and many teachers, I think, imagine that the creativity is for performing arts and that sort of thing. But it's a good answer, because I firmly believe that being able to make a presentation, being able to think creatively, think outside the box, those things are really important in most roles. Tell us, if you would, something about how you've got to your training. How have you got to where you've got to? Was it a straightforward path? What's your route been like?
Straight A student at GCSEs, so nothing there. And then I messed my A levels up. Various reasons, but I didn't do as well in my A levels at all. So I took a year out to have a rethink and replan what I should do. Whilst I had my year out, Mum suggested I should learn to touch type, because by the time I got into the world of work, there wouldn't be any secretaries doing your typing for you, which is the best piece of advice I've ever been given. And then we went off to study law at what was then Anglia Poly, and even then I didn't have the grades to do it. My teachers talked them into taking me. But there I was incredibly lucky, because a lot of the lecturers, law lecturers, lectured both at Cambridge University and at Anglia Poly in Cambridge. I'm a local girl, so I didn't go away for university. But it just gave me that grounding and that leg up to get back to where I should have been. I then went off to University College London and did 2 master's degrees. Wow.
So actually, what I take from that, which I think many of our viewers will take, is that it sounds to fail your A level sounds pretty disastrous, and yet you've got over that, and you've moved on and you've done amazing things. So I think probably we're concerned at times, certainly in the current situation where young people are worried about their futures, worried about getting grades and exams. I think probably, hopefully, from what you said, it isn't too late. It doesn't have to happen in one straight line. Is that right?
Oh, no. The thing is, you learn more in life from your failures than your successes. And also, there is always an opportunity there if you know where to look for it. If you're still living and breathing, there is an opportunity to take. You just have to try and find it. And it might not always be obvious. You just need to be open to it. And had I have gone straight to university, I probably wouldn't have done law. And yet it's the best decision I made. I'm a lawyer through and through, and it is the right fit for me, and it has carried me through every single job that I have ever done. I've required my law.
That's really fascinating, because in fact, with a law degree, presumably you could have been you could have specialised in any sector, and we have you in heritage, which is great. Can you give us an example of maybe 1 or 2 of the things that have been barriers or challenges, except maybe the fact you failed your A-levels first time? I mean, and what keeps you motivated? So what barriers have you overcome, and what keeps you motivated in your role?
I think, being the age I am, I probably will have seen more sexism or more overt sexism as well. It's still there, but maybe not quite as overt. But I've worked in very male-dominated environments. And so the people that you're looking to for career advice are men, and they don't understand what the position is as a woman. They can't. So sometimes I was getting very good career advice from male colleagues who I really respected, but actually I'm not sure it necessarily always helped me, because they just couldn't understand that what steps and what barriers that you have to face. There's lots of barriers, but I think probably the other real one to talk about is I've been made redundant or had threats of redundancy or restructures. I can't remember how many times in my career, because that is the way things are. And I've worked in both in the private sector and the public sector, and it's happened in both places. I hasten to add, you don't have a linear career nowadays. But again, in all of those, A, it toughens you up, and B, there's generally opportunities. Those opportunities, even being made redundant, are outside of the company, but there's always opportunities there.
I think what's important is that certainly in the past, people have had a job for life. That's not the case quite often now. And I think young people realise that having a portfolio career, doing different things, may well be the way forwards. And it sounds to me as if those life experiences you've learned the hard way, as well as succeeding in the end here. Can you tell us what's maybe one or two of the best things about your job, and maybe one or two of things that are less good?
Firstly, I get to use my law at the front line, protecting heritage and trying to save what's important, which is brilliant. Every day is different. And then I get to work with and meet really interesting, different people from all walks of life. So it's great.
And the less good things? Less
good things. Well, I spend more time behind my desk than I would probably like to, but that is the case with anybody at my level.
Very good answer. Can I ask you now then, what personal qualities do you think you might need to follow a career like your own?
Well, I think definitely enthusiasm. That's really important. Empathy for people, whether you like them or not, understanding where they're coming from so you can deal with them. And then self-belief. Know your weaknesses, but really believe in what you're good at.
Finally, two things really. One of which is, what personal qualities do you think a young person might need to follow a career like yours? So what personal qualities? And finally, what top tips might you offer people watching this video, please?
I think there's three things you need really. Firstly is enthusiasm. Secondly, it's having empathy for people. It doesn't matter whether you get on with them or not, you need to understand them and try and get along with them as much as you can. And then finally, it's self-belief. Know your weaknesses, know about yourself, but you really have to believe in yourself. Then with
top tips.
Yeah. Well, firstly, make active choices. Don't just drift along. Drift if you want, but choose to drift. Learn from your mistakes. And then finally, stay curious about everything, about life, about people.
Natalie, thank you so much. That's really helpful. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Peter.